Cool. So, welcome to the Celtic Heart Temple. And today with me is Maitreya Wolf. She is a wisdom teacher, evolutionary
mentor.
There you go. And a musician who teaches people how to turn pain into power so that they can live their purpose with confidence, joy, and skill. So, did I do justice to your description?
That's great. We can start there.
Awesome. Okay, so the purpose of this conversation is to bring your wisdom into the Celtic Heart Temple, because the temple has been built on the foundation of self-knowledge, self-mastery, and devotion. And when I got to know you, in my view, you ticked all three of those with your teachings and with what you write, as well what you put out into the world. So I really wanted to talk to you, and one of the topics that we are going to explore today is the grief, because I feel that in order to live our purpose, in order to fall in love with who we are, and in order to live from the heart, right? First, we need to do some healing of the heart and its shadows and whatever it may be carrying that will prevent us from truly living our purpose with confidence and with joy and with skill, right? So I suppose let me open then the floor for you, and if you could share with us where your story has begun and how grief impacted or was catalyst for you to where you are right now.
Sure. Well, first I want to say thank you for welcoming me into your temple. It's an honor to be here. So I have lived a very full, very beautiful life with a lot of challenge and hardship in it. I grew up in a challenging situation, a lot of love in my childhood, but also just a lack of alignment, you could say, between my one single parent and the reality of who she is as a being, especially who she was then, and who I was as being. Like what I needed and what she could give were not aligned and not congruent. So I lived with a constant sense of lost my train of thought. Can we start over?
Sure.
Okay.
No problem. Let's start over. Let's
Great.
welcome Maitreya Wolf into this conversation once again with her wisdom and teachings.
Great. Yeah. So grief and I have been walking together, I would say, all my life. And this is not to say that I've had a particularly awful life or anything like that, but just that I'm deeply, deeply sensitive, deeply attuned, always have been. I was born that way. And so it has brought me into the deeper dimensions of the human experience from the get-go. And, there was significant trauma in my childhood and my upbringing. There was significant trauma all throughout my life that just kept happening. And it brought me into the company of loss and hardship over and over and over and over again till I got to the place where I had to cultivate a life-giving relationship with grief to be able to live. And when we bring in the concept of purpose, you mentioned healing the heart so that we can live from the heart, so that we can live our purpose. The process of healing comes from an old Greek word, holos, which means to make whole. And that process is ongoing. So where grief is concerned, where living purpose with a broken heart is concerned, I've come to relate to it like, if you're awake, present at all, and even if you're not, but especially if you're present, you're going to be aware that the world is in a state of extraordinary pain and has been all our lives. And for hundreds of generations up to now, there's just been this ongoing hardship in this world. And that lives in our beings, that lives in our bones, that lives in our ancestral memories. You know, I come from the European diaspora, so the Inquisition, that's in my ancestral memory. That's why I don't have ancestral connection. That's why I don't know where the bones of my ancestors are, is because I come from a people who were destroyed over the course of 250 years of organized institutional violence. And it broke the it broke the threads in so many ways. So I live with a broken heart. I just do. I live with a broken heart, but I have learned how to patch it with gold, like in that Japanese pottery style. I have learned how to patch it with gold, and I have learned how to be brokenhearted in a way that's generative and allows for the movement of joy to flow through. Because my relationship with grief, I've got a series starting Monday. It's called Tending Grief, Feeding Joy. This is something that I teach in workshops. It's something I teach with my students in my mysteries, that to make a relationship with the fundamental brokenheartedness of being aware in our lives, of being present in our lives, to make a relationship with that is to open ourselves to the arbitrary joy that also lives inside of us. So grief for me is something that I just, I came into the world, I'm awake, I'm present, I'm here, I'm an old soul, all the things. So I'm just like, oh my God, I'm here again. And it's still such a mess. And there's still so much pain, and there's still so much fear, and there's still so much discord, and we're still having wars, and we're still all the things. And so I'm here again. What would big love do? Big love has to pour through this heart that is consistently that's broken again and again by life, but is also at the same time healed. It's also whole. So there's a way to hold that, the pain of being here, my own experience, the collective experience. There's a way to hold the pain that is not consuming. It's not debilitating. It's not overwhelming. It's actually, it makes me a greater being, and it opens the capacity for joy because it opens my capacity for feeling fully.
Yeah. And I believe this is what we are not taught what to do, right? To feel. And with us women, we have a natural capacity to feel beyond what we would normally feel, or like normally we would feel the pain when it's screaming at us, right? But then to our feminine bodies, or to our bodies, a woman body, right? The capacity to which we can feel, or what we can feel, or the different frequencies that we can feel, or deities or beings or whatever other presences that we can feel, is so great. And from what you are sharing, I'm understanding that this all starts with awareness, right? So one has an opportunity to become aware of themselves in order to begin cultivating in themselves those gifts.
Well, I think what's interesting to me is I live in a city now for the first time in a very long time. So I'm after having lived in a rural community for 15 years, I'm in a city, and it's fascinating for me to experience how everybody is processing, how this enormously diverse body of people is processing this, what I consider to be an awakening process in our collective experience. I'm in my middle years, and I'm looking at my own experience as the reckoning that is endeavoring to be a renaissance. And I consider that that is my particular microcosmic experience of the macrocosmic experience, that collectively we're in this reckoning as a species that is endeavoring to be a renaissance, and that energetic process is moving through everybody to the degree that it can. So I'm watching people, I'm thinking about this because you used the idea of like becoming aware. I'm watching people who are not necessarily what we would consider awake or aware. I'm watching them in this awakening process so
Mm.
often and frequently, not always, but frequently, I'm seeing the the flourishing of this beauty that people are waking up, especially now with this war that's just erupted in Israel and Palestine. I feel like there are so many people who are just finally like, something is cracking through the numbness, something is cracking through the resignation, something is like in so many people, even the people who are not necessarily what you would spiritually awake, whatever. They're just kind
Mm-mm.
of, oh God, this just hurts. It just hurts my heart. And they're trying to learn how to navigate this. But I consistently see in the people I talk with, because I talk to strangers all the time. And I love to, because I love to just be like, in a not direct way, just be like, how are you
Mm.
doing with all this? And people just saying like, I'm just feeling a lot, and I'm a little overwhelmed, I don't really know what to do with myself or whatever. But I see this process awakening. So I see this awareness. I wouldn't say that you need to have the awareness for the grief to start to give its gifts. I would say that there's something, grief is what I call one of the old powers.
Mm.
It's one of the original parts of the process of
Why is
individuating.
that?
The old power.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
What?
I have a very mythopoetic
Mhm.
relationship to life,
Okay.
and meaning, like, I think mythologically, I think poetically, I perceive and experience things that way. And so for myself, they're what I call these old powers, these fundamental energies that move through every experience. And grief is one of them, because if you live as a differentiated being, you are going to experience love, and you are going to experience loss. You are going to care about things, and they are going to break or die or
Mm.
turn on you, or you're going to turn on them. Whatever's going to happen, you're going to love, you're going to lose. That's going to that's going to happen. So the loss, that's where grief enters into you. That's
Mm.
where grief comes in and starts to give its gifts.
Mm.
And grief as an old power is like, it's this being. When I'm deep in grief, I'm relating with this being who's just like, I'm right here. I'm going to walk with you for a while right now, and you are going to continue to receive my medicine. You are going to continue to hear my teachings. You are going to continue to be in my aura, and I'm going to continue to cook you as a being. And
Mhm.
I personally have also a relationship with life that's all about the evolutionary and initiatory process. This is also something I teach my students. It's core of my work. The evolutionary and initiatory process. When these old powers come in, grief, love, beauty,
Mm.
wisdom.
Mm.
When these old powers come in strong, I'm just like, okay, you're here. Let's let's train. Let's do this. I give myself to the process so that I can be refined as a
Mm.
being, so that I can be initiated, so that I can evolve, so that I can become more coherent as an energy system and more integrated as a being, so that I can progress more fully towards living love, so that I can
Mm.
become more of a resource for the world around me. Because, like I said, I'm in my middle years. I'm moving into the realm of legacy. I'm not just in the realm of my own experience right now.
Yeah.
So I recently went through a breakup with somebody that I still love very deeply, and now we're parted. And the grief that catalyzed in me was extreme and ongoing for months. And I gave myself to it completely, because I recognized that this is the turning of my evolutionary wheel,
Mhm.
and I'm here for it. I'm not going to waste it.
Yeah,
And I think a
yeah.
lot of times, because we live in a grief illiterate culture, society, I'm in the States, so I live in a grief illiterate society, something that a place that fears and reviles and rejects and does everything it can to avoid grief, the pain in grief, because there's a lack of understanding that it leads to creativity if you
Mm,
can stay with it.
mm,
Um, I had to learn myself how to be with grief and stay with grief in a way that didn't wallow, but did stay fully present, so that that deeper gift that it's always offering could begin to open.
mm. So beautiful. While you were sharing, I've tried. I've tried. I was relating your experience to my own one, and yeah, recently I had done an exercise when I've had to look through all of my fears, and because there is no more room for them in my life, where I'm growing, where I'm going. Yeah, I am, yes, to appreciate them, but no to be led by them anymore. And in the self ceremony that I did for it, and when I was letting that part of me go, the amount of grief and loss that I have experienced in that moment was so tremendous. Yet I was also so grateful that I was able to see that and to be with that and to have that in my life, because without it, I would not have moved closer to where I am or learned things about myself that I didn't know existed. So I feel that for people that are pursuing to live their purpose, with confidence and joy and with skill, yeah, grieving is such a beautiful way of approaching it, right? And we all grieve in the different ways. And what you have shared and how you have stayed with it and how you have let it to show you and envelop you and move you forward on your path is something that is so wise. It is wise, right? No wonder you are a wisdom teacher. I was like, yeah, wow. So in your own experience and in your own life, the wisdom and the teachings that you got from working or being with grief in such a way, what would you, I don't want to say recommend because it's not a recommendation, but what would you like to share with people that are going through the grieving at the moment, and it could be any kind of grief, right? All grief is the same frequency, is the same emotion. What would you like to offer or share with people so that they can perhaps manage better or with more ease than they are managing now?
Yeah, stay with it and let it be there is one of the first things that I counsel with people, because a lot of the people I work with are people who are going through acute grief processes, the death of something or the loss of something.
Mm-hmm.
We go through these acute grief processes, and one of the first things I have to counsel is just stay, stay, stay. Because let alone that this society, Western society, is so grief illiterate, it is also terrified of the depth of the intensity of really feeling anything, anything, let alone painful things.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can't give yourself the space to feel the pain that's there in your experience, then you're also starving yourself of the joy that's there, because the capacity to feel opens in all directions. So to avail ourselves of real joy, not happiness, not dopamine hits, not like, I got my pretty thing, I got my satisfying other thing, I feel good right now until I don't feel good anymore. So now I'm going to have a drink, or now I'm going to watch some TV, or now I'm going to go find somebody to have sex with, or whatever. That's all conditional stuff. And there's a joy, there's an indwelling joy that exists here that we have to open to feeling, to make a relationship with. And one of the ways into expanding our capacity to feel and to be alive in that way, one of the inroads to that is the grief process. Because the grief process, when you lose something that you love, and that's where grief comes from, you lose something that you love, or ecological grief is based in fear, or sociopolitical grief is based in the pain of feeling others suffer. There's all these inroads where all of a sudden you're out of your default mode. You're not just on autopilot doing your daily whatever. All of a sudden you're like, oh, something got pulled open in this way that it's like, oh, that's really uncomfortable. That's really disruptive. I really want that to stop most of the times. And I'm just like, let it be uncomfortable. Stay with it. Don't dig into it. Don't start twisting a knife in it. Don't get in necessarily to the stories that it's going to start to tell, because there's a really, really fine line between grieving, just letting yourself feel the pain of fear or loss or impotence in the face of atrocity or anything like that. There's a really fine line between feeling what's there and like exacerbating the wound, which is kind of another default mode that people go to, is like, oh, there's pain, all of a sudden, like they're in the stories and they're twisting the knife in themselves and everything. But when you're in a grief process, one of the things I'm counseling people with all the time, and I literally, in a lot of the sessions I do with people who are in the grief process, we just sit together. And I'm just continuously saying, in whatever way it's called for in the moment, just stay, just stay, just stay. Learn how to breathe right here with how much it hurts, with how much more you feel right now. Let that breaking be a breaking open. Let it expand your capacity to feel, to really be alive in the reality of your life. Because what you're going to see eventually is that flowers are going to start to bloom there. Because that energy, you can't open yourself to that much energy and not do something with it ultimately, right? So ultimately what it's leading to is creativity. It's leading to beauty. It's leading to wonder. Wonder. So the first thing I counsel with people is just stay there. Don't avoid it. Don't start drinking. Don't start smoking. Don't start watching things. Don't go find somebody else to have sex with. Don't start eating lots of sugar. Don't, like, if you're going to do something with this energy, do something generative. Go running, make art, make music, dance, do some ritual. But to begin with, just stay right where you are and let yourself feel what you feel right now. Just stay right here and let yourself feel. And then if you can ground there, if you can breathe. So to come back to it, if the first thing is just sit with it. Just sit with it and recognize that you have entered into a relationship with an old power. and that there's an opportunity. Oh, and the other thing is, don't waste it. Don't waste the opportunity that the grief process is bringing to you. And the opportunity is to open to life more fully. And while the grief process is in progress, that is going to hurt. But it's not a bad thing that it hurts. It's just real.
Yeah, not trying to label it or to put stickers on it, right?
Yeah, or to control it or avoid it or rush it. Lots of people try to rush it, like, oh, I parted from this person, what, in August, in early August. And there's a part of me that's like, I shouldn't still be grieving. I shouldn't still be crying about this. I shouldn't still be feeling this way. And I'm like, why? I love this person. I was invested in this thing. It was a huge part of my life. It mattered to me. Of course, its death hurts me still. Of course it does. So I have internal conditioning around rushing the thing. And then people around you, not me in particular, I'm very, very supported, but like I see in my students and clients a lot of times that the people around them are trying to push them to feel better. Push them to feel better, push them to feel better. And that's not because the person is in the wrong place with their grieving process. It's because whoever's pushing them to feel better is uncomfortable with how they feel and wants them to be like back in the chipper so that this person doesn't have to deal with the discomfort, So there's this whole social matrix that rushes grief as well. But really just sit with it, stay with it, breathe, learn to breathe right there. And let this old power start to cook you.
Wow.
I hope that's coherent.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I love your expression, cook you. Yeah. And it's so easy, like in terms of creation, right? It is so easy to create out of this joyous, happy, confident, kind of go-lucky place. But the creation out of grief, the loss of something. Wow. Wow. Yeah. Have you created something out of that frequency of grief?
Yeah, I created a whole body of music, a whole chapter in my musical reality was created in the grief process of chronic illness I had for quite a few years. And I was very, very isolated in it. There was a beautiful component of living in a cabin in the woods on a mountain, which was idyllic in so many ways. But I was also I was in a really debilitating chronic illness, and I was alone in it. I was very isolated. I was very unsupported in it, and the illness I feel was a gift from spirit because I had just been through so much trauma in my life, and I was writing a lot of anger and writing a lot of anger around it. That was kind of my way to get through it. I didn't have emotional or spiritual intelligence at a very integrated level at that point in my life. And I was driving my body into the ground, and suddenly my body just was like, look, your car just broke.
That's it.
That's that. It don't work anymore. And all of a sudden, like all of the driving myself in the red that I was using to cope with the complex post-traumatic stress and pain and fear and everything else, it just suddenly it wasn't possible anymore. I couldn't run anymore. And so life made me sit and stay with myself, because I literally for a long time I couldn't really move much. I was really debilitated, and so I had to just be with myself in a way that was completely new, completely different, and opened these caches that I'm talking about, opened this this reality of being in my life more fully, and that did begin to bloom. And what it created was a huge body of musical work and writing and ritual arts and dancing. I always
Yeah.
do. But in terms of something somebody else could see, it would
Yeah.
be this album I made, Fertile Darkness.
Yes, I've listened to it. I've
Oh
listened to
yeah.
it. I have, and there was one song in particular that, yeah, I feel is so much like a descent into the shadow. It's the very first song in your album.
Yeah.
And when I first danced to it, it brought me into such a deep, dark place. And I was like, whoa, where are we now? You know, and I could feel the intent of it or the transmission of it in your voice and in the music and the way it was like spiraling, you know, deeper and deeper and deeper until it got you to where it wanted. You know, so I was so grateful. I remember, and then I got to know you as well, and I was like, oh my god, you know, so yeah,
Yeah, that song, those 2 winters that I lived in that cabin on the mountain, I had a wood stove for heat. That was the only heat in my house. So I tended the fire all winter long. And the winters on that mountain were serious. And I tended the fire all winter long and played that song as I tended the fire with the snow out in the forest. It was
Oh,
magical. And it healed me. It
wow.
definitely healed me.
There you go. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So you see, for all of those listening, definitely it is it is something. And I will definitely share that in the comments below so
Yeah.
that other people can experience that too. And in a way, our creations are our transmissions, right? Of our experience and whatever comes from above, you know, to support that too.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm so grateful for you for sharing all of that.
Thank
So
you.
to close it up, is there anything that you would like to offer or speak about in terms of your work, or what are you offering and what you would like to share that people can follow you or something? I will add whatever you share with me down below in the comments, where this video will appear, so that people know how to connect with you.
Yeah, I think one of the closing comments I would like to say is that it's okay to not be okay right now. And it's okay to need to take care of yourself inside of the intensity of the times. It's okay to feel fear and sorrow when it comes, or if it's here now. It's okay to be hurting. It's okay to be hurting. There is a way to be with all of this that is nurturing and healing and generative. And it's just a skill to learn. And it's one of the skills I teach. So if you want to talk to me about that, you can find me at my website, soulpowermentoring.com. You can find me online on Facebook and Instagram, Maitreya Wolf. You can find my music online, Bandcamp, Spotify, and Apple, or Tidal, or whatever, all the things. I have a YouTube channel. I have a series coming up. It begins Monday. It's called Tending Grief, Feeding Joy. And in that 5-week online series, which meets at 6 p.m. on Mondays, beginning October 30th, we're going to explore how ritual, creativity, and deep counsel can help us make a life-giving relationship with grief so that you can experience more joy in your life. And you don't need to have any familiarity with creativity, ritual, or deep counsel to participate. You can just come and dive in and bring your grief story and bring your tender heart and explore these things together in a circle of love and support. So that begins on Monday, and I'll share the details to you, Erica, so you can share it with your friends. And yeah, I do mentoring one-on-one with people. I have 6-month program and a year program that you can dive into. I also do tarot readings if you want to get a flavor for how I teach. You can come get a
Yeah,
reading.
yeah.
They're really amazing, amazing readings. I've been reading tarot for about
Mm.
20 years, and
Yeah, and I can vouch for that. Yeah, you receiving great feedback for your tarot readings, definitely.
yeah, the tarot readings are super magical because I'm looking for the path of power through somebody's current experience. And one thing I would say is, like, on this thing of purpose and power, it's not about the big. It's not about the big. It's not about the big. It's not about being the
Mm.
one great man or the one great woman who does the one great thing. It's
Yeah.
about being who you really are and
Mm.
walking that in a way that is integrated, confident, and vital with life force. Your purpose is not necessarily a task that you have to fulfill in the world. It's just your purpose is to be what you are. And a lot of getting to our purpose is like getting all the other shit out of the way and getting our heart back in here, getting
Yeah.
ourselves back in the body so that we can actually be who we are. And that will give its medicine to the world. So this is one of the things I teach people. And if you need support, please come and find me. I'd love to support you and, yeah, help you find your way through the times.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you. It was a pleasure to have you. So yeah. And on that, we're gonna press the button.
Gonna click.
Click.
There.